foundation of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be your host this hour. You know, it's funny, this morning on Facebook, most of you know that I get up early in the morning and I post up all kinds of stories and links on our Facebook page and on our website. Generally, those types of topics that are going to be fodder for today's range work. And about 5:30 this morning, 6 o'clock this morning, I posted up a link that said, Obama launches a new global warming video as phony consensus on global warming crumbles. And I stated, watch for the upcoming July announcements of new global warming and climate initiatives. Watch to see how they hurt the economy, strip states and individuals of even more of their rights. Mark this alert. Within 3 weeks, a massive new assault on individual and state rights will begin using climate change and environment as the excuse. Just another in a long list of tyrannies from Fauxbama, tyrant-in-chief, and his cohort of oligarchs on Capitol Hill. America, tyranny is here. Wake up. Well, guess what just landed on the Drudge Report? Literally 10 minutes ago, Obama unveils climate change plan that goes around Congress. He is launching a fresh battle over climate change with plans to curb emissions using executive powers that sidestep Congress, including controversial rules to cut carbon pollution from power plants fired by coal. It's a wide-ranging plan. He'll announce it in a speech on Tuesday. It's to lower carbon and renewable energy and encourage renewable energy. Here's the problem. We have a dictatorial police state right now. And, you know, you guys listen, those of you who are daily listeners, you listen every day. You hear me say these things. Our nation doesn't, because I'm not a national show. Yet America is sleeping through the death of 1,000 cuts. What possible anesthesia has America been given that they could sleep through the death of 1,000 cuts? The EPA is going to propose new plant standards by June of next year and finalize them later. The administration will float a modified proposal for new plants that were delayed last year in a draft rule unveiled in 2012. They point out that there is one option for opponents to the rules, and that is a Congressional Review Act. It's called the CRA. It's a little-known technique that was developed in the 1990s that allows Congress to nullify final federal agency regulations. And the rule has been only used one other time, to overturn a Clinton-era ergonomics rule. Resolutions under this CRA, the Congressional Review Act, are immune from Senate filibuster, so Harry Reid can't stop it. But the problem is that it's kind of one of these all-or-nothing proposals, because They can't vote on whether or not they want to keep parts of it or whatever. All they can do is vote on whether they want to nullify the pollution standards rather than modifying the actual regulations that he dictates to us. So here's the problem, people. We are at a point where our nation is no longer under the rule of law. The level of lawlessness that operates right now, day in and day out, is so egregious, so extraordinary, that I can't believe that America is sitting here putting up with this, and that I'm surprised and amazed, frankly, that there haven't been more civil disobedient actions. And I'm surprised, actually, that there haven't been more other action. In other words, when I say that, and please don't misunderstand me, and NSA, please don't try to take this out of context, I'm not suggesting that Americans should violently rise up. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm surprised that there haven't been more of that. More of those types of scenarios. I get it. Everybody's terrified. Everybody's afraid. Everybody's afraid to be targeted. These groups who could speak out about this in civil disobedience, the individuals who could speak out about this in civil disobedience, are afraid. They're frightened of the IRS. They're frightened of the NSA. They're frightened of the secret police. They're frightened of their doors being kicked in at 1 o'clock in the morning and being held under the NDAA for a terrorist act because they were belligerent. And I got to tell you, America, if that's in fact what you fear, doesn't that justify the rising up of America in peaceful, massive civil disobedience? Is that not worthy of that? Is that not proof itself that this nation is crumbling from a republic to a dictatorship? You can call it whatever, ism you want. I don't care whether you call it Marxism, socialism, communism, fascism. You can call it whatever you want. The simple truth is, whatever it is, we're sliding into it at an astounding pace. And this tyrant, a man who is a Manchurian candidate, without doubt, I mean, the guy is not an American citizen. The recent revelations by Michael Zullo on his birth certificate confirm that. They don't raise the issue. They just confirm and establish the facts so that anyone who looks at that can know that there's something desperately wrong with the man's birth certificate and also his draft card. They don't call it draft card. It's selective service. Another euphemism. So here's my point. We have completely abdicated the rule of law, and we are operating in complete and total lawlessness. It reigns in the land of the free and the home of the brave. If you have money, power, influence, you can get away with damn near anything. If you are a friend of this administration, you are showered and lavished gifts of money, power, influence. If you are against this administration, you must cower in fear from the IRS, the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, the ATF. It's terrifying. My point to you is, when you feel that level of fear, and I'm assuming that the vast majority of people listening to this, short of the NSA, which was recording this and every other show, obviously, don't you feel some level of resistance rising in you? Don't you feel the need to declare our sovereignty, our individual rights, our liberties, our freedoms? Well, I'm only one person. I don't know what to do. I get it. I'm only one too. But and I can only take this anecdotally. Apparently, I've got thousands and thousands and thousands of people that are listening every day, and I am changing hearts and minds. So the question for you is, what are you doing? Are you participating in that? Are you sharing? Are you educating those around you? That's not the only solution, but we got to start there. Be right back.
Battery Station in West Plains is your headquarters for getting and being prepared. Natural disasters, civil unrest, personal and family protection, long-term sustenance, and most importantly, peace of mind. Berkey bottles and home-sized water purification systems, survival food, MREs, freeze-dried food, survival knives, lanterns, ammunition, military sleep system, and of course, batteries of all shapes and sizes. Take charge of your own survival and security. The Battery Station, 303 Washington in West Plains, 417-257-7799 or batterystation.com. Coast to Coast AM brings the Ozarks a whole new feel for radio. Midnight to 6 a.m. every night here on the Ozarks Best News Talk 107.1 The Point. Where else would you get callers talking about everything from UFOs to war trends, from mental energy to anomalies, and from lost knowledge to aliens? Listen to experts and researchers who are part of the guest list every night here on the Ozarks Best News Talk. Don't miss Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. Midnight to 6 a.m. every night here on the Ozarks Best News Talk 107.1 The Point.
You see, the problem that we have as a nation is that we're afraid. We're afraid of the future, but we're more afraid of the immediate threat that our terrorist government makes us feel every moment of every waking hour. Make no mistake about it, you have far more to fear from your own government than you do from some Islamic extremist group. I'm not denigrating their threat to our nation, but I am saying that the odds of you being injured financially, injured physically, injured judicially, legislatively, and your individual rights destroyed and trampled upon is far greater from Washington, D.C., than it, and Jefferson City, I might add. I'm not going to leave them out. Or your state capital, whatever state you're in. It's far greater that you will incur the wrath of a terrorist in government than the wrath of a terrorist from a foreign nation. I mean, everybody seems to be in on the game and in on the joke except us. I read an article belatedly that was in a paper about this group, a Chinese group that bought a food producer here in Missouri, and the state legislature lifted a law that bars foreign investment in agricultural land just for this deal. What kind of treason is that? Why the hell would you do that? The plan was put in place many years ago to keep, when fear was arising that Japan was going to be buying property from the United States in an effort to cover the debt loss that they had in holdings, debt holdings from us. Is the fear any lessened because it's now China instead of Japan? I don't think so. China and Japan are the number one and number two holders of debt, of the United States debt. China has about 1.3 or 1.4 trillion. Japan has about 1.1 or 1.2 trillion, depending upon what day you ask. So, make no mistake about it, Japan and China are the number one and number two holders of federal debt. They're going to have to get that some way, and we're not going to pay it in cash, that's for darn sure. I mean, we can't pay $17 trillion in debt, much less, $3 trillion to those two foreign governments themselves. I mean, $3 trillion out of $17 trillion is owed to them. You see, what we have is a government, both state and federal, I might add. And if you're a state representative who hears this, and I know some of you listen, I got to tell you, I really don't care whether you like it or not. I've said to some of you right to your face that I decry what government is doing. That I demand that America rise up and in peaceful, massive civil disobedience march upon not only our federal but our state capitals, toss all of you out, and start over with a constitutional foundation, a group of individuals, men and women, who have made a commitment to the Constitution. Scrap all these administrative agencies. Scrap all of these committees and groups that are eating our substance. What we are experiencing, people, is far, far worse than anything that ever occurred in 1776. You got to be kidding me if you think there's even a comparative line. The news out today is that nearly all Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 76% of Americans are hand to mouth. That means if they have no paycheck for a week or two, they're done. 3/4 of Americans live paycheck to paycheck with no emergency savings of any kind. 1 in 4 have enough money in their savings account to cover only 6 months of expenses. 1 in 4. That's ridiculous. That, ladies and gentlemen, in the immortal words of George Bush, now transferred to Fauxbama, is mission accomplished. You see, that's the goal. They look at America as a giant sponge which is holding on to wealth that can be redistributed to the world. And they're doing it. They're draining the sponge, applying pressure and squeezing it, and then taking that and raising the economic value and benefits around the world. They're draining us of resources in an effort to break us financially because they know that there's this piece of paper that's in the way. You ever heard the term can't fight your way out of a paper bag? Well, government can't fight its way out of a paper or through a paper constitution. It's in their way. So they do end runs around it, and they attempt to soak it, to soften it. What we have is the United States of America, and the American taxpayer is being fiscally drained of their resources, mentally drained of their ability to withstand or stand up against the tyranny, psychologically beaten into fear to stop them from rising up. Meanwhile, your wallet is being drained every day. It's like they've got a siphon in the tank of America's financial resources. Our national resources of finance, our natural resources are being funneled off. We're the wealthiest nation, so we're the biggest target. I mean, an intelligent thief doesn't rob the poor guy. He goes into the guy who's got a McMansion and a lot of silver and a lot of gold in a safe somewhere, right? Mission accomplished. Fauxbama and the oligarchs have achieved a significant milestone. 76% of America can't afford bread a week after losing their job. Meanwhile, right on cue, Fauxbama comes out with new climate rules that are destined to damage our economic stability even more by shutting down power plants. Well, remember his phrase, under my plan, electric costs will necessarily skyrocket? Here we go. Another opportunity to do two things. One, injure the economic stability of the country. Two, destroy your personal economic viability by drawing more resources away from you and higher electric bills, because he's going to shut down the coal plants, which are 70% of America's source of electricity. Combine that with these other climate change things like the blue ways. Do you not think that the blue ways is tied to his climate initiatives? Of course it is. You'd be a fool to think otherwise. It's all part of a global agenda that he is the facilitator of. And it's not just him, by the way. Let me tell you something. Anybody who thinks that Obama is the great mean beast, the great Oz, is a fool. Because when you pull the curtain back, it's not Obama that's standing behind that. It's the globalists and the elitists who are pulling his strings. He's a shill and a puppet. Nothing more. He's not some kind of mastermind. I mean, the guy is as dumb as a box of rocks. Really. You can sit there and tell me he's a constitutional professor. Let me tell you, that was an honorary title. He's not that intelligent. If he was that sharp, if he was that witty, if he was that intellectually brilliant, why is it that the guy can't talk without a teleprompter? Hell, I could walk up there and do a better job than he does. I don't have a teleprompter. I don't have a script. I sit here behind this microphone every day, and I talk right off the bottom of my heart and off the top of my head. You know why? Because I know my beliefs are rock solid and grounded. I know where they come from. I know how I arrived at them. I know what fostered them. I know where my foundation is. I'll tell you why he can't. Because even he is gifted with that touch of divinity that says human beings strive for freedom and liberty and intelligence. This is what I talked about yesterday. Even he has that spark, that mote of dust of divinity inside of him. And he's arguing against them, his own knowledge, wisdom, and what he knows to be true. That's why he can't carry on a conversation with America. Because it's all memorized diatribe. It's all manual oral diarrhea. He doesn't even believe in what he's saying. Not deep down. Because that spark of divinity, that mote that God has given to each and every one of us to strive for freedom and liberty is present even in him. And he can't deny it. No matter how tyrannical, no matter how abusive, no matter how oppressive he becomes. No matter how much evil he's willing to wallow in to try to fill that void with something other than the mote of divinity and God's grace, he can't do it. That's why he can't stand up there without a teleprompter and have an honest intellectual discussion with America. Because he doesn't even, if you scrape, again, I've used this analogy before. You've got two items there in your hands. One is a shot put. It's solid all the way through. The other is a Christmas globe, a Christmas ball. It's painted. The paint looks pretty. But if you scrape it away, you realize it's hollow on the inside and there's no substance to it. On the other hand, my beliefs are more like the shot put. They're solid all the way through. You can scrape and scrape and scrape and scrape and scrape. I know where I got my foundational beliefs. I know where I got my understanding of our Constitution, its principles. I know where I obtained my system of belief and principles, my intellectual integrity, my honesty. It came from God, it came from nature, and it came from the minds of those who were wise enough to recognize it when they saw it and put it down on paper. He doesn't have that luxury. And so he betrays himself. He commits personal treason every single day. He sacrifices himself on the altar of treason and evil because he does not have the wherewithal and the ability to rip out that mote of divinity, that touch of God within him. We'll be right back.
Fox News Radio. I'm Chris Foster. Russia's foreign minister isn't saying where the NSA leaker Edward Snowden is, but he calls our government's demands to send him back unacceptable.
President Obama talked about trying to get Snowden back at a White House event yesterday.
We're following all the appropriate legal channels and working with various other countries to make sure that rule of law is observed.
But Secretary of State John Kerry was much more blunt, calling on Russia to do the right thing and turn over Snowden.
Fox News Radio's Rich Johnson in Washington. All 8 attackers and 3 guards reported killed in Kabul, Afghanistan.
The presidential palace, the defense ministry, and a former hotel now used by the CIA were all targeted. Just last week, the Taliban announced they were preparing for talks with the American and Afghan governments.